Weeks passed on Zenthera, and Daniel settled into a quiet rhythm. He lived in a small home near the Garden of Echoes, a place where Zenthari children learned to sing with their ancestors. The house was simple but warm, filled with human things like a coffee mug, a worn jacket, and Kira's drawings taped to the wall. Skira thrived. She spent mornings with the Zenthari elders, learning to weave light and read star maps in the afternoon. She returned to Daniel, who taught her how to bake simple cakes, using nutrient paste and sweetener. She laughed when they burned and proudly served them to confused guards who politely took a bite and hummed in polite surprise. Queen Lyra watched from a distance. At first she observed how Daniel never raised, his voice, how he listened when Kira spoke, how he let her make mistakes and learn from them. She saw the way Kira ran to him after lessons, not with duty, but with joy. One evening Lyra appeared at the door. Unannounced, Daniel was fixing a broken humidifier. Kira sat beside him, handing him tools. "You may enter," Daniel said without looking up. Lyra stepped inside, her silver robes flowing. She looked less like a queen and more like a woman searching for something. "I wish to understand," she said. Daniel wiped his hands and nodded. "Sit." She sat on the floor like Kira did, not on a throne. "How do you teach her right from wrong? Be talking." Daniel said, "If she hurts someone, I ask her how she would feel if it happened to her. I do not punish, I explain. That is not how we do it. We show consequences through resonance, pain if needed. Pain does not teach kindness," Daniel said. "It teaches fear." Lyra was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Why did you keep her? You could have left her at a station or called for help." "Because she was alone," Daniel said, "and no child should be lonely." Lyra looked at Kira, who was now drawing a picture of the three of them holding hands. "I ordered her dissolved," she whispered. "But you did not do it yourself," Daniel said gently. "Someone else made that call. You were not there. I was the queen. I should have known. You were busy ruling a galaxy," Daniel said softly. "Maybe you needed someone like me to be there when you could not." Tears formed in Lyra's eyes, not the shimmering kind Zenthari shed, but real wet tears that fell to the floor and vanished into the stone Kira saw and crawled over. She put her small hand on her mother's knee. "It is okay, Mother. You found me now." Lyra pulled her close, and for the first time held her daughter, not as a royal heir, but as a child. From that day Lyra visited often. She joined them for meals, awkward at first, using human utensils. She asked Daniel about Earth, about his parents, about why humans hugged when they were sad. He told her stories of his father, teaching him to fix a bike, of his mother singing while cooking, of how his dog would wait by the door every day, no matter how long he was gone. "Love is waiting," Daniel said simply. Lyra began to change. She spent less time in the throne room, and more in the garden. She learned to bake with Kira. Even if her cakes were too dense, she sat with Daniel under the twin suns and listened to earth music. The elders noticed and whispered among themselves the queen was softening. The empire was losing its edge, but Lyra no longer cared. One day a crisis came. A deep space storm threatened the outer colonies. Zenthari ships were damaged and stranded. The elders wanted to send only the strongest crews to help leave the weak behind. Lyra called a council. "We will send all ships," Daniel said. Standing at the back of the chamber, all eyes turned to him. "Humans do not speak in royal councils." He stepped forward anyway. "If we leave anyone behind, we are no better than the storm." The elders hissed, but Lyra raised her hand. "He is right," she said. "We do not choose who lives based on strength, we choose based on need." It was a new idea for the Zenthari, but they obeyed. After the meeting, Lyra walked with Daniel through the garden. "You changed us," she said. "No," Daniel said. "You were ready to change. I just reminded you how." Kira ran up, then holding a small plant with glowing leaves. "Look, Father, Mother. I grew this." It was a hybrid plant, part Zenthari crystal flower, part earth moss. Daniel had given her seeds from his last supply crate. "It should not grow," Lyra said, amazed. "But it did," Kira said, "because both parts wanted to live together." Lyra smiled, a real smile. Not the polite curve of lips, but one that reached her eyes. That night, the three of them sat on the roof watching the stars, Kira between them. "Do you think other humans are like you, Father?" she asked. "Some are," Daniel said. "Some are not, but the good ones are worth finding." "Do you miss Earth?" "Sometimes," he said, "but home is not a place. It is the people you love." Kira leaned her head on his shoulder. Lyra placed a hand on her daughter's back. A message came the next week from the Human Alliance. A scout ship had detected Xanthari activity near the border. They were nervous, tensions rose, the elders wanted to close the borders again, cut all contact. But Lyra refused. "We will send an envoy," she said, "and Daniel will go with them." The chamber fell silent. "A human as our voice. He knows both worlds." Lyra said, "He raised a Xanthari child with human love. He is the bridge we need." Daniel was stunned, but he agreed. Before he left, Kira gave him a small crystal pendant. It hummed softly when touched. "So you hear my song even far away," she said. He kissed her forehead and hugged Lyra, who held him longer than expected. "Be safe," she whispered. The journey to the human border took 2 weeks. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Xanthari ship feeling out of place. Yet strangely at home, the crew treated him with respect, not as a guest but as one of their own. When they met the human scout ship, Daniel boarded alone. Captain Lisa Morales greeted him, suspicion in her eyes. "Daniel Cruz, I thought you were lost in deep space." "I was found," he said. He explained everything about Kira, about Lyra, about the new path the Xanthari were walking. Captain Morales listened, arms crossed, but her eyes softened when he spoke of Kira. "You really love her?" "She is my daughter. Not by blood. Blood does not make a family, Captain," Morales said after a pause. "Choice does." She agreed to bring the message to the Alliance. Weeks later, a reply came. The Alliance would open a peace channel, the first in 200 years. When Daniel returned to Xanthara, Kira ran to him crying with joy. Lyra stood behind her, calm but her eyes bright. "You did it." "Father," Kira said. "We did it," Daniel corrected. That evening, a celebration was held, not a grand royal event, but a simple gathering in the garden. Humans and Xanthari shared food, music, and stories for the first time. Daniel watched Lyra laugh at something Kira said and felt a deep peace. He was no longer just a freighter pilot. He was a father, a friend, a bridge between stars, and as the twin suns set, painting the sky in gold and violet, Kira took his hand and Lyra's and said, "Now we are all home." The Empire did not fall that day. It grew not by conquest, but by connection, not by purity, but by acceptance. And in the heart of it all stood a human man who chose love over logic, a queen who learned to feel, and a girl who proved that family is not about where you come from, but who stays with you. The stars above shone brighter that night, as if they too were celebrating a new kind of future, one built not on fear but on the simple, brave act of saying, "I will care for you." And so the story of Daniel, Kira, and Lyra became legend, not because they fought great battles, but because they dared to love across the void, and in doing so changed 2 worlds forever. Months turned into a year, and peace between the Xanthari Empire and the Human Alliance grew stronger. Trade ships exchanged goods, not weapons. Schools shared knowledge, not secrets. And in the heart of it all lived Daniel, Kira, and Queen Lyra. Their small home near the Garden of Echoes became a place many visited, not for power but for wisdom. Kira was now 4 in Xanthari years, but 12 in human time. She stood taller. Her silver skin now held a soft golden sheen from spending time under both suns. She spoke in harmonic tones with the elders and in English slang with Daniel. She could weave starlight into shapes and fix a broken comms unit with her eyes closed. She was becoming something new. Not fully Xanthari, not fully human, but something in between, and both sides began to see her as a symbol of what could be. One morning, a message came from the Outer Rim. A human colony ship had crashed on a dead moon, its crew stranded with failing life support. The nearest Xanthari vessel was days away, but Kira heard the distress call through the garden's resonance flowers. She ran to Daniel, who was teaching young Xanthari children how to build simple radios from scrap. "Father, we have to go." He looked at her, then at the sky. "I am not a rescue pilot anymore, but you are my father, and they need help." Lyra appeared behind them, her robes flowing in the breeze. "I have already ordered a ship prepared." Daniel nodded. "Let us go." The rescue ship was sleek and fast. Kira sat beside Daniel on the bridge, her small hands steady on the controls she had learned to fly from watching him for years. They reached the moon in 6 hours. The colony ship lay broken in a gray crater, smoke rising from its side. Daniel suited up. Kira insisted on coming. "You are too young. I'm your co-pilot," she said, "and your daughter." He could not argue. Together they stepped onto the dusty surface. The air thin and cold survivors huddled near a broken airlock, their faces pale with fear. A woman stepped forward. Her name was Maria. She held a crying child. "You are Xanthari," she said, looking at Kira, and human Daniel added, "I am Daniel, this is my daughter." Kira Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You came?" "Of course we came." They worked fast. Daniel patched the life support with parts. From their own ship, Kira used her resonance to calm the panicked children, humming a soft lullaby that made their fear melt away. One boy asked, "Are you an angel?" Kira smiled. "I am just a girl who likes to help on the way back." Maria sat with them in the mess hall. "How did a human come to raise a Xanthari child?" she asked. Daniel told the story simply and honestly. Maria listened, then said, "My son lost his father in the crash. He has not spoken since." Kira looked at the boy, then stood and walked over. She sat beside him and placed her hand on his. "I lost my first home too," she said softly, "but I found a new one." The boy looked up and after a long silence whispered, "Your skin is shiny." Kira laughed, and that night the boy slept without nightmares. When they returned to Xanthara, the survivors were given shelter not as outsiders but as guests. Lyra met them at the landing pad. She greeted Maria, not as a queen, but as a mother. "You are safe now," she said. Maria bowed her head. "Thank you." That evening, Daniel found Lyra in the garden staring at the stars. "You are quiet," he said. "I am thinking," she replied, "about how small we are, and how big kindness can be." He stood beside her. The silence comfortable. Kira joined them holding 2 cups of warm nutrient tea. She had learned to make it taste almost like earth coffee. "We did good today," she said. "Yes," Daniel said, "we did." But something darker stirred beyond the peace. Rumors reached the capital of a splinter group, among the Xanthari called the Pure Ones, they believed. The alliance with humans was a betrayal, that Kira was an abomination and Daniel a threat. They struck at night. Daniel woke to alarms flashing red. Kira's room was empty. He ran through the halls, heart pounding. Lyra was already in the command center, her face hard as stone. "They took her," Lyra said, voice tight. "The Pure Ones have Kira where the old temple on the dark ridge. It is shielded from resonance." "I know it," Daniel said. He had flown past it once during a storm. "You cannot go alone," Lyra said. "I'm her father, and I am her mother." Lyra replied, "I will not lose her again." They took a small ship, no guards, no fanfare, just 2 parents racing against time. The temple loomed on the ridge, black stone against a starless sky. Inside they found Kira tied to a weaving pool. The Pure Ones stood around her, their leader, a tall elder named Vorakyu. "Defile our bloodline with human weakness," Vorak said to Lyra. "Is not weak," Daniel said, stepping forward. "She is strong because she is loved. Love is chaos." Vorak spat. "No," Daniel said. "Love is choice, and she chose us just as we chose." Her Vorak raised a blade, made a frozen sound meant to sever Kira's resonance forever. Lyra removed first, not with violence but with song. She sang the oldest birth hymn, her voice shaking the walls. The Pure Ones staggered, their harmony broken in that moment. Daniel ran to Kira and cut her bonds. Vorak lunged, but Kira stood and faced him. "I am not your shame," she said. "I am your future." Her voice rang with both human courage and Xanthari power. The ground trembled. Light burst from the weaving pool, not to destroy but to reveal. Memories flooded the chamber, images of Kira laughing with Daniel, learning from Lyra, helping strangers on a broken moon. The Pure Ones fell to their knees, not in defeat but in understanding. Vorak wept. "I only wanted to protect our way. But our way must grow or it will die." Lyra said gently. They returned to the city not as victors but as healers. The Pure Ones were not punished. They were invited to learn to see with new eyes. Kira stood before the council days later. "I am not just Xanthari. I am not just human. I am both. And that is not wrong. It is a gift." The elders nodded. Many for the first time saw her not as a mistake but as a miracle. Daniel watched from the back, proud beyond words. That night the 3 of them sat on their roof again, the stars brighter than ever. "Do you think there are others like me?" Kira asked. "Maybe," Daniel said. "And if there are, we will find them." Lyra took her daughters' hand in Daniel's. "We are not just rebuilding an empire," she said. "We are building a family across the stars." Years later, Kira would become the first ambassador of two worlds. She would travel between human stations and Zenthari spires, teaching both sides to listen, to learn, to care. Daniel never left her side, sometimes as a teacher, sometimes as a quiet presence in the back of a room, always as her father. And Lyra ruled not with cold precision, but with open hands and an open heart. The story of how a lonely freighter pilot saved a silver baby and changed two civilizations became legend, told in schools and songs, in the hum of starships passing each other in peace. But to them, it was never about legend. It was about love. Simple, messy, stubborn love that refused to let go. And in the end, that was the most powerful force in the universe, stronger than empires, faster than light, deeper than space. It was the reason a human man and an alien queen sat under twin suns watching their daughter chase fireflies made of starlight, and it was enough. In the cold silence of deep space, where stars burned like distant campfires, a small human freighter named the Wanderer drifted through the void, its hull scarred from years of travel, its engines humming a tired song. Daniel Cruz stood alone on the bridge, his boots scuffed, his uniform faded from too many washes. He was not a soldier or a scientist, just a cargo pilot who liked quiet and routine. He had been hauling supplies between mining outposts for 10 years, never asking for trouble, never looking for glory. But today the scanners beeped with something strange, a small pod tumbling through the blackness. No signal, no identification, just a soft blue glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel frowned, but curiosity won. He steered the Wanderer closer. The pod was smooth and oval-shaped, made of a material that shimmered like liquid metal. It was warm to the touch, and when he brought it aboard, it made a low humming sound that vibrated in his bones. Inside the medbay, he used a laser cutter to open the pod carefully. Steam hissed out, and then silence. He peered inside and froze. A baby lay curled in soft silver fabric, her skin pale like moonlight, her face peaceful but strange. She had 4 eyes closed tight and tiny fingers that twitched as if dreaming. Daniel had seen alien species before, but never one like this, small, delicate, almost fragile. He checked his logs. No known species matched her features, no distress call, no record of a ship in this sector. She had been dumped. Like trash, his heart ached. He had no idea what to do, but he could not leave her. He wrapped her in a thermal blanket, warmed the room, and fed her drops of nutrient solution from a syringe. She latched on weakly, her eyes fluttering open for a second, revealing silver irises that glowed faintly. He named her Kira, after a star his mother used to point out from their backyard on Earth, a small bright light in a sea of darkness. Days turned into weeks. Kira grew fast, her silver skin smooth and cool. To the touch, she did not cry like human babies. Instead, she made soft chiming sounds when happy and low hums when upset. Daniel learned to read her moods by the tone of her voice and the way her skin shimmered. He rigged a crib from spare parts, added soft lights, and played old Earth lullabies through the ship's speakers. She would stare at the ceiling, her 4 eyes tracking the sound with wonder. As she grew, she began to mimic him. She tried to say Dada at first, then Daniel, then Dad. Her voice, musical and layered like wind through crystal bells. He taught her simple words in English, showed her how to hold a spoon, how to wipe her face, how to laugh when he made silly faces. She watched him fix the engines with wide eyes, and one day handed him a wrench with perfect timing. "You are going to be trouble," he said, smiling. She just grinned, her silver eyes sparkling. But not everything was easy. Kira's body reacted strangely to human food. She could not eat solids, only liquid nutrients, and her skin dried out in the ship's dry air, so Daniel built a humidifier from old parts and lined her room with moisture pads. He stayed up nights when her breathing grew shallow, her body vibrating with a fever he could not understand. He read every medical file. He had contacted no one. He was too far from any station, and even if he reached one who would help an unknown alien child, so he did what he could. He held her, sang to her, told her stories about Earth, about oceans and trees and dogs that barked at nothing. Kira soaked it all in. She loved the story about the dog. Most of all, she would bark softly and giggle when Daniel pretended to chase her through the narrow halls of the Wanderer. 3 years passed. The Wanderer became more than a ship. It became a home filled with drawings on the walls made from Kira's finger paints and mismatched socks, always one missing, because Kira liked to hide them. Daniel never thought about family before he was an only child. His parents gone, too soon. But now he could not imagine life without her. She was his purpose, his joy, his daughter in every way that mattered. Then one day the scanners picked up a massive ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It was shaped like a blooming flower, made of living crystal that pulsed with light. It moved without sound and blocked his path completely. A voice echoed through the Wanderer, not through speakers but inside his head, calm, deep and powerful. Identify yourself and the child you carry. Daniel's blood ran cold. He stepped in front of Kira, who clung to his leg, her eyes wide with fear. My name is Daniel Cruz. I found her in a pod 3 years ago. She has no one else. The voice paused, then said, We are the Zenthari Empire. That child is of our blood. She is Kira, daughter of Queen Lyra. You will return her at once. Before he could argue, the Wanderer's systems shut down. Lights dimmed, engines silent. Even the air recycler stopped for a terrifying second, then restarted under someone else's control. The freighter was pulled gently into the alien ship like a leaf caught in a stream inside. The Zenthari vessel. Everything glowed softly. Walls shifted like breathing skin, floors hummed underfoot, guards tall and silver-skinned, with 4 eyes watched him without blinking, their expressions unreadable. Kira hid behind Daniel, trembling. A figure approached, taller than the rest, her skin shimmering with colors that changed like oil on water. She wore a robe of woven light and moved with grace that made Daniel feel clumsy and loud. This is Queen Lyra, Kira's mother. She stopped before them, her eyes fixed not on Daniel but on Kira. Kira looked up, her small voice. Shaky mother. The word hit Lyra like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, her hands trembling. For the first time in centuries, she felt something raw and sharp in her chest. Pain. Regret, confusion. You live. She whispered. Of course she lives, Daniel said, stepping forward. She is strong because someone cared for her. Lyra turned her gaze. To him, her eyes cold. You are human. You are not of our kind. You have no right to raise a Zenthari child. I had every right when no one else wanted her. Daniel shot back, his voice low but firm. You threw her away like garbage. The guards tensed. But Lyra raised a hand. Silence. She looked at Kira again. Really looked at her and saw things that broke her composure. The brown tint around Kira's eyes, a human trait. The way she stood with one foot slightly forward like Daniel, the small scar on her knee, from falling while chasing a floating bolt. This child should have been dissolved at birth. Her genetic pattern was unstable, contaminated by your ship's radiation during the cosmic storm. She was deemed unfit. Daniel laughed bitterly. She can. Count to 103 languages. She can fix a plasma coil. She shares her food. She says please and thank you. She is the most fit person I know. Kira tugged his sleeve. Dad, the word echoed in the chamber. Why does my daughter call you father? Lyra asked, her voice tight. Because he is. Daniel said simply, because he stayed. Lyra said nothing for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Guards led Daniel and Kira to a guest chamber. Not a cell, but not free. Either. The room was beautiful with soft light and singing plants, but it felt like a cage. That night Kira could not sleep. She curled against Daniel's side. Will they take me away? I won't let them, Daniel said. But even he did not know if he could stop an empire. The next morning Lyra returned alone. She sat across from them, her posture less regal, more human. Tell me everything, Daniel said. So he did. He told her about the pod, the fear, the sleepless nights. The first time Kira laughed, the way she cried when a toy broke, the joy in her eyes when she learned a new word. He spoke of love not as a grand thing but as daily choices, feeding her when she was sick, holding her when she was scared, teaching her right from wrongly. Ra listened, her 4 eyes never leaving. His face. In Zenthari society, children are created through genetic weaving. 2 elders merge their essence in a pool of starlight. No parents, no messy bonds, just pure lineage. That sounds lonely, Daniel said. It is efficient, but not loving. Love is illogical. Maybe. Daniel said maybe, but it works. Kira reached out and took her mother's hand. Lyra flinched at first, then slowly closed her fingers around her daughter's small ones. "You are different," Lyra whispered to Kira. Me?" Kira said. "And that is enough, Daniel," added. Lyra looked at him. Really looked at him not as a crude human, but as the man who had given her daughter life, not just breath, but joy. "Safety, belonging. You may stay," she said quietly. "For now." Daniel nodded. "Thank you, not for you," Lyra said. "For her," but as she left, she paused at the door and without turning back, she said, "Thank you." That night, Daniel sat by the window watching the stars, Kira asleep in her bed. He did not know what would happen tomorrow, if they would be allowed to stay or forced apart. But for now she was safe, for now she was loved, and in the heart of an alien empire. A human man and a silver-skinned girl held on to each other, not by blood, but by something stronger choice. The stars outside burned on silent witnesses to a bond that defied species logic and fear. And somewhere deep inside the crystalline palace, a queen began to wonder if maybe love was not so illogical after all. Time flowed like a quiet river on Xanthara, and the bond between Daniel, Kira, and Queen Lyra deepened with every passing season. Kira was now 15 in human years, but still young by Xanthari standards. Yet her mind held wisdom beyond her age. She walked the halls of the academy not as a student, but as a teacher, showing young Xanthari how to speak with kindness and human children, how to listen with their hearts. Daniel no longer wore his old freighter uniform. He dressed in simple robes, woven with both human cloth and Xanthari thread, a symbol of his place in two worlds. He spent his days in the Garden of Echoes, not fixing engines, but building bridges between species. He taught Xanthari engineers how to design ships that felt like homes, not weapons, and human diplomats how to speak without demanding. Lyra ruled differently now. Her throne room was open to all, no guards, no barriers, just a queen who listened more than she commanded. She had learned that strength was not in control, but in trust. One morning, a strange signal came from the far edge of known space. Not a distress call, not a message, just a repeating tone. Soft and sad like a lost song, Kira heard it first through the resonance flowers in the garden. She ran to Daniel, who was helping a group of human and Xanthari children build a solar kite. "Father, it is calling." He listened through the comms unit. The tone was unlike anything he had heard before. Ancient, broken, but full of longing. Lyra joined them, her eyes serious. "This signal comes from the void beyond the black veil, a place no ship has ever returned from. We have to go," Kira said. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because someone is lonely," she replied, "and I know what that feels like." Lyra looked at them both, then nodded. "Prepare." The Wanderer, the old freighter, had been restored not with new parts but with care. Its hull polished, its engines tuned, its cabin filled with memories. They boarded not as strangers but as a family. The journey took weeks. The Black Veil was a region of space where stars died and light bent in strange ways. Time slowed and thoughts grew heavy. On the 10th day they founded a ship. Not Xanthari, not human, but something older. Its shape like folded wings, its surface covered in vines of glowing moss. They docked carefully and stepped inside. The air was stale but warm. The walls pulsed faintly like a sleeping heart. The center of the ship lay a pod much like the one Kira had been found in, but larger and cracked open. Inside was a child, not Xanthari, not human, but something in between, with skin like twilight and eyes that held galaxies. Kira knelt beside the pod. The child stirred and reached out a trembling hand. "Do not be afraid," Kira whispered. "I am like you." The child made a sound like wind through ancient trees. Daniel checked the ship's logs using a translator he had built from old tech. The words came slowly. "We are the Vera, the first ones. We lived among stars before your kind were born. We tried to share our knowledge, but others feared us. They hunted us for our light. We hid here to protect our last child." The child's name was Elith. They brought Eli back to Xanthara, wrapped in soft blankets fed with a mix of nutrient paste and starlight. Eli did not speak at first, but watched everything. With wide, curious eyes, Kira stayed by Eli's side. Day and night she sang human lullabies and Xanthari hymns. She showed Eli how to draw with colored light and how to hold a cup without spilling. Slowly Eli began to smile, to mimic words, to laugh. At Kira's silly dances the elders were nervous. This new child was unknown, a mystery that did not fit their records. But Lyra stood before them in the council chamber once. "You said the same about Kira," she said. "And you were wrong. Love does not ask for permission, it simply acts." Daniel added, "We were all once strangers to someone." The elders fell silent, and in time they too came to care for Elias. Seasons turned, Eli grew stronger and began to share the knowledge of the Vera, not through words, but through dreams, images of star nurseries where life was born from song of oceans on dead worlds that still remembered rain. Of a time when all species spoke one language of light, Kira learned fastest. She began to weave not just starlight but memory itself, creating tapestries that showed the past and possible futures. One day she showed Daniel and Lyra a vision. A great darkness moving through the outer galaxies. Not a ship, not a storm, but a silence that swallowed sound and light. "It is coming," she said quietly. The council gathered in fear. Some wanted to hide, others to build weapons. But Kira stood tall. "We will not fight with fire," she said. "We will meet it with song." Daniel understood she meant connection, not force. They called all allies. Humans and Thari, even the former pure ones, now healers and teachers. They gathered in the Garden of Echoes and began to sing. Not one song, but many human chants, Zenthari hymns, Vera whispers, all woven together into a single pulse of hope. Eli stood. At the center, hands raised, light flowing from their fingertips. When the silence reached the edge of Zenthera, it did not attack. It paused as if listening. Then slowly, it began to change. Not into light, but into something new. A soft hum, a question. Kira stepped forward. "Alone, you are not alone," she said. The silence broke like glass, and from it emerged beings made of shadow. And starlight, lost and afraid. They had been the silence not by choice, but because they had forgotten how to be heard. Kira taught them to speak again, with kindness, with patience, with time. The Garden of Echoes became a sanctuary for all. Not just the known, but the forgotten, the lost, the different. Daniel watched from a distance as Kira held the hand of a shadow being, showing them how to plant a seed. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Lyra stood beside him. "She is more than we ever dreamed," she said. "She is exactly who she was meant to be." Daniel replied. Years passed and Kira's work spread across the stars. Schools opened where children of all kinds learned together. Ships flew not for war but for sharing stories and songs. Daniel grew older. His hair gray, his steps slower, but his heart full. One evening, as the twin suns set, he sat with Lyra and Kira on their favorite bench. "Do you ever miss Earth, Father?" Kira asked. "Sometimes," he said, "but I found something better." "What is that?" "A family that reaches across the stars." Lyra smiled and took his hand. "You gave us more than a daughter, Daniel." She said, "You gave us a future and you gave me a home," Daniel said. Ellie joined them then, now tall and calm, their twilight skin glowing softly. "The stars are singing again," they said. "Yes," Kira said, "because we taught them how." In the quiet that followed, Daniel closed his eyes, not in sleep, but in peace. He had started his life alone on a freighter with nothing but routine and silence. Now he sat surrounded by love, by family, by a universe that had learned to care. And as the first stars blinked awake in the violet sky, he knew his story was not ending. It was echoing outward, touching lives he would never meet but would always be part of. For in the end, the greatest legacy was not in empires or inventions, but in the simple act of saying, "I see you, I hear you, you matter." And that was a song that would never fade. The years moved gently on Zenthera like leaves carried on a quiet wind. Daniel's hair had turned fully gray, his hands slower but still steady, his eyes still warm with the same kindness that had once saved a silver baby from the void. He no longer flew ships or fixed engines, but his voice was still strong and his story still drew crowds in the Garden of Echoes. Kira, now a young woman, stood as the first bridge ambassador between all known species. She wore robes stitched with threads from human cloth, Zenthari crystal, and Vera moss, a living symbol of unity. She traveled often but always returned home to the small house near the singing flowers where her father waited with a cup of warm tea and her mother with a quiet smile. Eli had grown into a calm, wise presence, their twilight skin now shimmering with soft constellations. They helped lost beings find their voices and taught elders how to listen, not just with ears but with heart. Peace had taken root not as the absence of war but as the presence of care. Schools bloomed on human stations and Zenthari spires, where children learned each other's songs and shared meals without fear. Trade was no longer about profit, but about sharing what each world had to give a human. Medic might teach healing herbs to a Xanthari, while a Xanthari engineer would show humans how to build ships that healed themselves. But even in peace, shadows sometimes stir. A new signal came not from the void, but from deep within human space. A distress call, broken and urgent, from a colony called Haven's Rest. Kira recognized the voice. It was Maria, the woman they had rescued years ago from the dead. Moon Daniel stood at once, his old pilot instincts returning. "We must." Galira nodded. "I will. Come to." They took a small ship, not for war but for help. When they arrived, Haven's Rest was in chaos, not from attack, but from sickness. A strange fever had spread through the colony, its people weak. Their minds clouded, they could not speak, only hum in broken tones. The local doctors were lost. Daniel entered the med bay and saw children lying still, their eyes open but empty. Kira knelt beside a little girl and placed her hand on the child's forehead. She closed her eyes and listened. "Not with ears but with resonance. It is not a virus," she said softly. "It is silence." Eli, who had come with them, stepped forward, their voice low. "This is the echo sickness. It happens when a mind forgets it is loved. How do we fix it?" Daniel asked. "We remind them." Kira began to sing the same lullaby she had heard as a baby from Daniel's lips, the one about stars and dogs and warm blankets. One by one, the sick turned their heads toward her. Lee wove light into shapes of home, of family, of safety. Lyra sat with the elders of the colony and held their hands not as a queen, but as a mother. Daniel walked the halls, visiting every bed. He told stories of Kira's first steps, of burnt cakes, of chasing socks through the Wanderer. He spoke of love not as a grand thing, but as daily acts of showing up. Slowly the fever broke. Maria wept as her son sat up and whispered, "Your voice sounds like home." In the days that followed, the colony healed not just in body but in spirit. They built a new garden in the center of town, filled with earth flowers and Xanthari resonance blooms. Before they left, Maria gave Kira a small locket. Inside was a picture of Daniel, Kira, and Lyra taken during a festival. "You saved us again," she said. "No," Kira replied. "You saved yourselves by remembering. You were not alone back on Xanthara." Daniel sat on the porch, tired but content. "You did good today, Father," Kira said, sitting beside him. "We all did." Lyra joined them, holding 3 cups of tea. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not opened that pod all those years ago?" Daniel asked. "Every day," Kira said, "and I am glad you did." Ellie appeared at the gate holding a small plant with silver leaves and golden veins. "I grew this for you," they said. "It sings when the wind blows." Daniel took it and placed it by the door. That night, as the twin suns set, a soft chime filled the air. The plant was singing a song of home, of love, of belonging. But peace is never final. It must be tended like a garden. Weeks later, a message came from the Outer Alliance. A young, human boy had been found alone on a derelict ship. He did not speak, his eyes full of fear. He had been raised by machines with no human touch, no voice, no name. Kira looked at Daniel. "We know this story?" "Yes," Daniel said. Standing slowly, they went, together this time, not as rescuers but as family. On the cold metal deck of the derelict ship, they found the boy curled in a corner, his clothes torn, his hands shaking. Kira did not reach for him right away. She sat a few feet away and began to hum the same lullaby. Daniel sat beside her and spoke softly. "My name is Daniel. This is my daughter Kira, and that is Queen Lyra, but you can call her Lyra. She makes the best burnt cakes in the galaxy." The boy looked up, tears in his eyes. "Do you have a name?" he whispered. "Not yet," Kira said. "But you can have one when you are ready." They stayed with him all night, not pushing, not demanding, just being there. By morning, the boy had taken Kira's hand. "What is your name now?" she asked. He thought, then said, "Jace." "Welcome home, Jace," Daniel said. "Back on Xanthara." They gave him a room next to Kira's, filled it with soft light and books and a small radio that played Earth music. Jace learned fast. He laughed at Daniel's jokes, cried when Kira told him about the lost socks, and shyly asked Lyra to teach him how to bake. In time, he too became part of the family, not by blood but by choice. Daniel watched them one evening from the garden, Kira teaching Jace how to weave light, Eli showing him how to listen to the stars, Lyra bringing out a tray of slightly burnt cookies. His heart swelled. He had started with nothing, just a lonely man on a freighter, Now he had a daughter, a son, a partner, a home that reached across species and stars. The universe was vast and full of unknowns, but in this small corner of it, love had built something that would last, and as the first stars blinked awake, Daniel smiled, knowing that the story was not his alone. It belonged to all who chose to care. For in the end, that was the truest kind of humanity, not in skin or blood, but in the courage to say, "I will stay," and that song would echo forever.